Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Alabama Care. I'm McCartney Hagar, and today I'm going to be sharing with you some information about the Britney Act. I think we all have a general idea of who Britney Spears is, but in case you don't know, she's a pretty popular pop star. If you've heard the song Toxic, that's who we're talking about. So, why are we talking about Britney Spears on a disability news network? Well, Britney was actually several years ago, over 13 years ago, was put under a conservatorship/guardianship. And this is a system we've talked about a little bit on Alabama Care. But if you have any questions about this story as we go, please feel free to put in the comments your thoughts, your feelings, maybe what I'm not making clear. So we're going to talk about guardianships, Britney Spears, and how they affect disability rights today. So to begin, what is a guardianship and why is Britney Spears under it? Well, she's been under one for 13 years, after a sort of mental breakdown and some problems with drugs. But that's not normally the case for most people in that situation. It's usually a result of someone with a disability, and in the event of some kind of mental issue, it's often temporary. So a guardianship is essentially a tool that caregivers and friends and family of people with disabilities can use to help them stay in the community. So this would help, let's say, if someone is unable to communicate or maybe to not fully able to understand complex laws and decision making in a way that could endanger them, they would be able to find someone they trust who can make these decisions for them on their behalf and essentially keep them, part of society and living the way they want. But conservatorships are also very limiting when it comes to the person's ability to decide things for themselves. So if your guardian disagreed with you on something, maybe even something trivial, they would be able to override your decision. And while in some ways this could keep someone safe, it could also be a little bit dangerous when we talk about violating their civil rights. So that's why these things are a bit controversial. While they can be used in very positive ways, there's a very specific process that advocates are pushing for to keep people from ending up in a conservatorship for maybe an undue reason or in a conservatorship that's abusive. So in the case of Britney Spears, she had this sort of episode a long time ago, and since then she's been fighting to get her conservatorship reviewed and taken off eventually. So this has been a really long process for her, and unfortunately, evidence shows that her right to due process of law, which means that her right to a fair trial and to be accurately heard in court, has been violated. So we're going to pull up an article here about how that happened and what that has to do with disability rights. So in response to this problem of, a 13-year conservatorship is not usually the norm. And despite Britney's efforts to repeal it, she's been under this for like a decade. And this has been a huge topic among her fans. And that has led to a lot of actual pushback in the realm of law. So today, we have this new issue of an actual bill that's going to help protect the rights of people with disabilities. And today, I'm going to be talking about how that bill is helping and some of the ways that it can improve, according to advocates, and maybe a little bit of my own personal opinion. So, as you can see in this article, it has 3 key points and a picture of Britney Spears smiling. So, the points basically summarize that. So there's a bill bipartisan, meaning that both parties are for it, that wants to reform conservatorships to help protect people like Britney and maybe people with disabilities that are under guardianships. So this act would give people in a conservatorship the right to ask for their conservator or guardian, the person that helps them make decisions, to be replaced by a judge, someone that they wouldn't know. And that may sound scary, but in the case of Britney especially, she's a very successful woman. And unfortunately, under the conservatorship, her ability to manage her own money is not recognized. So that leaves her father in charge of it. And yes, in some situations that could be in someone's best interest. But in the case of Britney, there's evidence that maybe her dad's taking it a bit too far. So she would like to get him replaced. One example of some things that have led people to believe this conservatorship is abusive is that she's been forced to go on tour, which generates huge amounts of money. But at the same time, she can't see any of it. Now, this source was a bit dubious. I watched a YouTube video for this part, but I heard, according to this video, that she only gets $1,500 a week. Now, if you're a star worth, millions, you should be able to have access to the money that you've worked for over the years. And while being a celebrity seems easy and fun, they do actually work very hard when it comes to touring, making songs, staying in shape, and dancing. So you have to factor that in. And despite all the work Britney puts in for her artistry, she only gets $1,500 a week to live on. Her dietary needs are also restricted. She isn't allowed to go out to eat. She has to stay on a strict diet. Some things like this suggest that the relationship between her and her father has been compromised. The reason that someone would want to limit her access to fast food and want her to go on tour really has to do with money. If she's eating out and she's blowing her money, then it's not going to her dad. And right now, her dad not only gets paid to be her conservator, which comes up in the next article, but he's also getting a large portion of her paycheck. So this is why maybe Britney obviously wants to change her situation. Now, if someone was a court-appointed guardian, as this new bill would make available, they wouldn't have to have that conflict of interest. They wouldn't know Britney. They wouldn't, they would be under more observation from the law, meaning that they would not just want to make money off of her. So that's how her interests could be protected under this new system. But there are some maybe drawbacks to it. So some even question if Britney should have been put under a conservatorship in the first place. And we'll see in the next article that this can happen quite often. It is really an issue to be put under a conservatorship when you don't need it. Like the couple in this story from the New Yorker, how the elderly lose their rights. So basically this couple was Thank you, Alex. This is an example of how guardianships and conservatorships can be taken advantage of. Right, and in this situation, the people are not being protected by it. So that's what this bill would do. It would reform it. That way, if someone feels that their conservatorship or their guardian or conservator isn't doing a good job or maybe is exploiting them, they would be able to pick someone else to help them with their needs. Aw, thank you, Mandy. So, in this article, we see how a couple was an older couple, basically a stranger they never met, went to a judge and asserted that this couple wasn't able to make decisions for themselves and needed to have a conservator. So she got letters from the couple's doctors they hadn't seen in quite a while, and she was put in charge of them without their knowledge, or consent. And in this situation, this woman did this to many people, and she would put them in assisted living and sell their belongings. So this is an extreme example of how a conservatorship or a guardianship can be, misused by people that don't have the recipient's best interest in mind. And under this bill, if the couple, wasn't able to get out of a conservatorship, which I think they did, they would at least be able to choose someone that they know and trust to make these decisions and to handle their money in a way that would allow them to still be a part of society and to have as much independence as they want, need, and can handle. So I really think that this is a really great bill, and it's a good first step in the right direction. So I have often feared ending up in a conservatorship for me because I don't feel I need one. One thing that I think a lot of people with disabilities tackle is maybe feeling like people don't trust them to make simple decisions or to navigate the world in a way, informed. Just because I'm in a wheelchair, that doesn't mean that I don't know how to accurately cross the street or judge when a situation is dangerous or to spend my money responsibly. So this is a really important issue, especially for people going through the transition process, which I think, on the tail end of right now that I'm in college. This era when you're reaching out and starting to go into the adult world can be really scary for parents and the, I wouldn't say children, but the adolescents involved. So I think that really open communication and looking into all the options is very important. So in our next article from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, which is a really great organization, I definitely encourage you to look into some of their work, and they give a lot of great information on different policies related to disability. So they support using supported decision making, which is a sort of softer version of guardianship. When you have supported decision making, it's for people that maybe some things they're able to do on their own. But there are some things that maybe they're not comfortable with, or they don't feel like they can navigate well enough on their own. So with just supported decision making, you would be able to assemble a team of friends and family that you trust, and they would be able to give you input on what you'd like to do. So that is another way that people with disabilities can get support to live in the community while retaining some of their civil rights. And but guardianship does have a place. It's not for this situation is not always applicable. Let's say if someone is completely unable to communicate, then knowing their wants and needs is not possible at this time. Maybe in the future with better technology, that can be a thing. But so supported decision making is also very important to consider before putting someone under a guardianship or before asking for one. And here we have lots of examples and details of how this works and the process, and it's put in plain language, which I really appreciate. So this is something, if you are thinking about getting a guardian or putting someone else on being someone's guardian, I highly recommend that you look into all the avenues and learn about the responsibilities involved. This requires a huge amount of trust, communication, and it's a very important job. So I highly encourage, everyone to respect each other and work together on these kind of things. And if you'd like more information, I think we've done videos on guardianships and supported decision making. So whichever avenue you're interested in exploring, we have lots of resources on Alabama Care, as well as the resources I have shown on here today. So I'm just going to take a minute to acknowledge the chat. Kim Spangler has recommended a documentary called Britney versus Spears on Netflix. Yeah, and she talks about all the other options available, like supported decision making. Thank you, Kim. That's wonderful. Yeah, I definitely agree. Supported decision making is a great tool if maybe guardianship is too much. And Mandy says, I love you, Brittany. Yes, I love Britney too. um, and Alexander points out that in the situation of Britney, that's how guardianship can be abused. Alex also points out that supported decision making in Alabama. Oh, so we have Colby's Dream Team. Yeah, he's featured on here pretty often. So yeah, check out his 5 podcasts for sure. So just to reiterate, I wanted to go over a few of the other situations that can be signs of conservatorship abuse and, things that a lot of people worry about. So in Britney's situation, I've said that she's been forced to work against her will, but she's also currently not allowed to get married or have children. And I didn't mention this earlier, and I should have, but the reason I'm coming back to this at the end is because there is also a greater issue among the disability community of marriage equality and reproductive rights. So I really encourage everyone to read up on that, and maybe I'll do a broadcast for the future. So remember that you are important, and it's okay to want things. I think that it's one thing that guardianships in the wrong hands can enforce in people is that we aren't able to make well enough decisions to want things and know what we want. But I think that everyone has that ability, and accentuating that and respecting that is really important. So in the end, I think this bill is a really great thing for us, and while lots of activists would like to see it go further, including me, because I think, I would never want to be in a conservatorship that I don't need, and I wouldn't want anyone else to be in that situation either. Because again, it's a very drastic measure, but it is ultimately to keep someone safe in the appropriate circumstances. Again, you don't want to end up like that couple, they didn't even know the woman that started their conservatorship. So it's very important to respect the rights of people with disabilities and to actually involve them in the process of if they feel they need a guardianship, if talking with them, if you feel like there's an open communication and a level of respect, then consider it. But I really want everyone, I think my whole thesis here is to work together and respect the humanity of everyone you know, regardless of how they look, regardless of the way they communicate or to the level they communicate. And I mentioned that some people aren't able to communicate in a way that we can properly interpret at all, but that doesn't mean that they don't have wants and needs too. So always, no matter what, respect the humanity and the desires of someone, because ultimately, a life where you're unhappy is very difficult to live, and we don't want to put anyone we know or we care about or we're entrusted with the care of in that situation. Yeah, I don't know really what else to say. This is really a complicated issue for, I think, a lot of people. Because again, the transition process, that's all I can think about when I present this. Because you go from being a child and you go from being an adult, but a lot of the needs you've had throughout your whole life aren't really diminished. I still need help being fed, I still need help being dressed, and that, a lot of times is associated with being a child. But despite someone's needs, that doesn't mean, we all have the same needs fundamentally. We all need to be loved, we all need to be a part of society, to be nourished, to have our human, fundamental needs met. So even though I have to meet those in different ways, I need to be lifted or use a Hoyer lift sometimes, that doesn't affect my ability to, or my desire to be a part of society and to live a life that anyone else would dream about. So keep that in mind when you're talking with people with disabilities. And also, if you'd like to share your story, I'm going to start doing broadcasts with some first-person perspectives. So we'll have viewers, listeners share what their experience has been like, not only with the transition process, but with any of the topics we've covered so far. So going to college, getting your first job, or maybe your inability to do so. These are all things that I would like to hear about. And I want to hear your story. That way we can know how our state is doing We are Alabama's news network for people with disabilities, and this is really important to us. So if you have a story you'd like to share or an experience that you think was very powerful, please contact Alex, contact me in some way. I think Alex is going to put some information up on that soon. So just to give you a heads up that we're going to be pursuing that. And no matter what kind of disability you have, your ability to communicate, if there's any way you can get your message to us, please try. Because I want to hear from you, and I want to see how we can improve everything in the state and the country with, I'm only one person with one experience. So anything you think is important, please feel free to share. We have another comment. In my opinion, IQ scores, ICAPs, or diagnosis alone should not be determinatives of guardianships. I think that is a very good point. Thank you, Kim. Yeah, that is something I didn't even think to include. So I think that we often hear like mental age or IQ as indicators of someone's ability to make decisions or communicate or so forth. But I tend to agree that that does not mean that an IQ score that is maybe low or a mental age. I don't think that that's definitely an indicator for guardianship. So if you think that you qualify for a guardianship specifically on that basis, or someone you know does, I really encourage you to rethink that and really assess what you're comfortable with or what your loved one is comfortable with. So please, if you're going to pursue guardianship, please think it through. And please consider supported decision making first. I think that's a really great system, and it's kind of the best of both worlds. And I think one of the main things that activists are pushing for is supported decision making in most cases, and using guardianships very rarely. So I think that would be great. So yeah, thank you for bringing up that point, Kim. I really appreciate that. And hi, Mandy. Yeah, if you want to share your story, Mandy, let me know. Let's see. Alex has some more information about the personal testimony. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So he says that the way we're taking those submissions is the Alabama Care Facebook page. Just message us. And that's really exciting. So I'm really looking forward to hear from you all. Thank you for listening today. And if you have any questions about either of these systems, I think Alex said, I mentioned earlier in the video that we have lots of information as well as the sources I've put up here today. So thank you all for listening, and take a minute if there's any questions for anyone, anything I haven't made clear, please share that and I'll be happy to reiterate anything. I feel like there's probably some stuff I've left out because this is a very complicated issue. So just a disclaimer, this is not comprehensive, but it's something very important to me that I would like to talk about. So thank you all for watching. Let's see, I think we've gone through our articles and we've acknowledged the chat. So we're excited to be working on the Colby Act for Alabama. Oh, that's so exciting. There's going to be a Colby Act. Will that involve supported decision making and making that, how does that work? Kim Spangler just mentioned that, by the way, the Colby Act. This is exciting. I guess I will, maybe I'll do a video on that shortly. Or, Kim, I'd love to interview you. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been great. And again, if you need more resources, please look at our page. So this has been fun. Thank you all. And I hope we can all continue to have these little chats. And yes, I'm so excited. Okay. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for watching. Go listen to Britney.